Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty. I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we finish up our Land of 1,000 Space Billionaires, or whatever we ended up calling it. This was a suggestion by our patron Seth, who always comes up with the settings that he often suggests somehow end up really dystopic, and I don't know why that is. But remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com. You can click on a link and submit a prompt, and we will build your world within a reasonable amount of time. If you want to follow us on social media, we're over on Twitter at Let's World Build. If you want to come join our Discord, please go ahead and do so by clicking the link in the description of this very episode. And if you're feeling particularly generous and want to give us money, or you want access to those sweet, sweet patron-only episodes, you can click the link for our Patreon also in the description. Now, the last we left off in our Land of 1,000 Space Billionaires, we are in a fertile, brand new planet, and there's all sorts of weirdness. And the thing that we ended up last time was we had a twist. Everyone can only feel one emotion. Now, I have my own reconciliation for this twist, and I wanted to start first because I wanted to bring it back to our first episode. I wanted to remind everyone that the very first tenet had to do with puppies and kitties and all sorts of adorable animals. And that tenet kind of got ignored or forgotten for a little bit. And I wanted to make sure that when I reconciled this twist, I was able to bring that tenet back to the forefront and really make it important and special. So my idea with this whole reconciliation of everyone only being able to feel one emotion, there's some caveats to it. One, they're only able to feel one emotion at a time. And two, the way that they're able to help regulate these emotions is by going and hanging out with the animals that were brought on this ship. So they're essentially therapist animals that everyone goes to. And again, that tenet got left by the wayside. I want to bring it back to the fore, and I want to make sure that this part is vital. So that's my reconciliation for the twist. How does everyone feel about that so far?
I like it. Mine was going in a similar direction, saying that the emotional limitations are due to the alien psychic fields that we had discussed were compounding negative emotions of people as they kind of get closer to the objects. And in doing so, that stifles out the other emotions that people feel. And a way to bring the puppy and kitten tenet in would be that animals are immune to this effect, or at least Earth's animals are. And I'll be diving more into that in my faction, actually.
You have psychic cats and dogs. Okay, I can support this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that works pretty well. Now, one thing I do kind of want to bring up is, can we make it so the humans don't know exactly why they're only able to feel these emotions, or one emotion at a time rather? Because I like the idea that the characters don't know, far more compelling, where it's like there's this weird field in this planet that dampens and heightens certain emotions. And I like the idea that they're trying to figure it out, and they suspect that it has something to do with these giant alien monolith things, but they're not sure, and some choose not to believe that.
Courtney's explanation is exactly the same idea I had for the twist. But why hers is better is I think she tied it to the creatures being immune to it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I like that concept as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because what that ends up doing is we already have these two factions in play, the colonists themselves, and then we have the girl Hitler's friends. And she's come in contact with these objects, so maybe she has a better sense of why her emotions are shifted, whereas the colonists don't, because they haven't really, studied these things directly. I think it's neat if they create some kind of like geometric field around the planet that messes with people's emotions. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, I think it makes sense if the colonists don't know, and maybe, girl Hitler does know why it is.
whenever you say girl Hitler, I'm just picturing like Hitler for her, like a pink, glittery
That's
Hitler.
exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I think that Lady Hitler is like it definitely completely blunts the edge of this fascistic leader. Where it's like, no, it's not some like very dangerous individual. It's just Hitler in like a pretty dress, and it's like maybe we shouldn't do that, you know?
I'm doing it.
I mean, to be fair, yeah. I mean, if we want to take the piss, then we're more than willing to, you know, like, because, yeah. Anyway.
Who is to say? I mean, we don't know if girl Hitler is like, you know, very masculine. We don't know what her deal is. We just know she's a girl. That's all.
It's true. It's very true. We don't know what girl Hitler is like. Yeah.
I mean, she could be super femme. I'm not passing judgment here.
Let's bring it back to the animals here.
Yes.
What I think might also be interesting as we consider this is like maybe there, whether it be superstition or whether it has a genuine effect, maybe as people are out in the wild, they take animals with them, or like they have like what are essentially animal companions or like familiars that are just like, yeah, I've got a capuchin monkey just hanging out on my shoulder. Like, you know, you see these people who are connected with these animals because for some reason, while they're out there, they feel like they're able to respond better, have these different emotions better. And, you know, like maybe it's not just a stationary thing. Maybe we can expand it to having the explorers have these things as well.
That is basically my faction, actually.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. But before jumping into that, going back to the idea of the colonists not really recognizing what's going on, I think that also makes sense given that they've been on this 120-year journey, and even if they'd been in cryogenic sleep for most of the time, that's still like they were still kind of lurking around in the neural link VR thing that they had, and there was still a passage of time, so they might not really recognize that shift once they actually get to the planet.
Yeah. Daniel, how did you reconcile the twist exactly?
It's exactly what Courtney said, that the geometric shapes are creating some kind of emotional resonance that changes how people, what emotions they can feel, like their spectrum of emotions. And I'm guessing my thought was that because Lady Hitler has more nefarious intentions, it amplifies her one emotion of wanting to get revenge on, you know, the coup, the revolution that killed her father and all that nonsense. Whereas the colonists, maybe they all have individual insecurities, like they have a more varied range of emotions, but because of the emotional field, that's restricting them to what they're most concerned with. So maybe one person is like really obsessed with, you know, curiosity, and it takes them to some insane extreme as an emotion. And so it creates kind of like this trippy paradise, I think, among the colonists that could become horror. And it's interesting because I'm watching Raised by Wolves right now. The new season just came out and it's only a few episodes in. And a lot of this is making me think of Raised by Wolves because they have this concept of this, like, we don't really know what it is in the story. It could be a AI, it could be an actual god, but there's this thing that speaks to certain people and it like changes their behaviors. And I'm getting the sense that these geometric objects, the field it creates, has the same effect on people.
Now, can I add in a thing as well? Because there is a trope in fiction where if you want to show that someone is evil, you have them kick the dog, right?
Oh, no.
Now, obviously, we have Lady Hitler. And because she is hyper-focused on maintaining just the singularity of hatred or ambition or what have you, maybe she has an aversion to animals because they bring in other emotions and like make her feel some things that she feels she needs to cull as a matter of like maintaining her mission.
Yeah, I do like that. It's almost like she views it as the emotions are making her weaker, but in reality that's what makes her human, and she's losing that.
Exactly. And while that's like kind of well trodden, I like that concept, and it's like maybe we should also acknowledge that feeling things is a good thing that happens, you know.
Yeah, I like that explanation. I had in mind the opposite, in that I wonder if she had her own kind of animals and uses them to hone her emotions in a specific way. But I like how that ties a lot of it together. If she actually is actively exterminating the animals she encounters in order to keep her flock focused, right? I think that serves the narrative more.
I keep thinking that her spiritual animal is like a crab for some reason. Like,
or an insect. Yeah.
No, we've done insects too much, Daniel. Like,
well, it could be some kind of like space crab insect.
Space crab.
These are earth animals, Daniel. It's very clearly some kind of like a furry crab from someplace. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. I feel like we've reconciled the twist pretty readily and pretty quickly as well. I think that everyone was pretty on board with the concepts that we were kind of focusing in on. So that brings us, of course, to today's faction. And Courtney, you sounded like you were chomping at the bit to start with your faction. So because of that, I'm going to have Daniel start first. Awesome. So Daniel, why don't you start us off and tell us about your faction today?
Oh, the old classic switcheroo.
Of course, it's about subverting your expectations, Daniel. That's
so really many victims. The Last Jedi was a victim.
Yeah,
it's endless.
Well, I mean, this is a podcast about family. Is really what.
Oh God, no one's ever gone.
Yes, exactly.
God, shoot me in the face. Speaking of which, Boba Fett, total disaster. But we can get into that later.
Okay. We might want to save that for a patron-only episode.
Yeah. God, talk about the many ways something can go wrong. So for my faction, in terms of factions, I was thinking about. I should be thinking about factions that are having an active influence in the setting where they are now on the planet. But I think this faction can still have an active influence in that I imagine the ship that they arrive in is still there. I imagine it's probably really large and it might serve as either a base of operations, or if not a base of operations, it's contains knowledge on its data banks that they may need. So I imagine it's still in their society. So what I was thinking is that perhaps along the journey, during that revolution when a lot of people were killed virtually in the virtual realm and then certain people just didn't wake up, these people were rationalized, we said, as being killed because, at least to the colonists, that there was an expected percentage of people who wouldn't survive. And so the lie was created, which is what Lady Hitler is pissed about, that's the reason why all these people died. So I thought perhaps some of these people, like when they were killed, they didn't actually die. So like some of these people, for whatever reason, I'm not sure yet, have become sort of digital ghosts or resonances in the virtual realm, which still functions to some extent. And so it's possible to go back into that virtual construct, the sleeping construct, and find those people who have been disconnected from their bodies because their bodies have been thrown away. They stopped functioning, but their minds are still resonating in that realm. And so those people possess knowledge of what happened during the revolution and of the distant past. And so while I don't know to what extent they might be fully realized beings, like I have a feeling you can't just talk to them like normal people because they don't have bodies anymore. They're not really people. They can be consulted with. And I wonder if that's the beginnings of some kind of faith, whether it's a faith for the colonists or perhaps it's a faith that, Girl Hitler wants access to, given that she cares about the past.
Daniel, I love that idea so much. And you know how last episode we were talking about how this sounds like a prestige television show?
Yeah.
I think you just gave us our season 3 finale twist where Girl Hitler walks into some place and like turns on a program and is talking with her dead father through like this like kind of ghost situation. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Her dad's probably there. Maybe that's why she wants to get access to the ship,
Yeah, maybe like throughout season 3, that's when Girl Hitler actually takes over. And then like there's this whole twist. And yes, absolutely.
And I can see there being, just like in, taking inspiration from Raised by Wolves, in that show, there's like the atheists quote, and then there's the Mithraics, which are like your classic sun worshipping pre-Christianity cult. And so I can imagine there being the evolution of certain different kind of faiths among these colonists, whether the colonists themselves have a more rational view of the world and Lady Hitler has the opposite, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe they develop the faith, and it's Lady Hitler who's become more rational. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of religion too, like if we wanted to do a contrasting thing, then maybe people overall in the colony go towards like the ship VR construct presence as their sort of deity in a way, and this fascist person is more towards like idolizing the alien psychic energy because she feels that it like empowers her and it's making her stronger, and she thinks that the others maybe are weaker because they keep sort of referencing their own humanity in a way.
Now that might be kind of an interesting way to approach it as well, because traditionally, when it comes to fascism, there's this kind of perversion of tradition and this perversion of, keeping the old religions and kind of deifying, well, that's kind of silly, deifying a religion. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is this idea, right, that in this regard, the lady fascist here is actually more of someone who's focused on progress or focused on change, which I think is kind of an interesting point. Now, mind you, like there's still going to be some authoritarianism in there, obviously, but I think the idea that they're more focused on this psychic entity or monolith or what have you, or the series of monoliths that are scattered throughout this alien landscape is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it could be like she's trying to strengthen the human race by becoming like more closely linked with this alien whatever that's going on, and kind of use the others as like holding themselves back by not embracing it fully.
We also talked about the child that her friend, I guess, is supposed to have now.
Like a follower or something.
Don't remember who had it.
Friend is a bit loose. Let's call her the follower, because really, come on.
It could be her buddy. It could be her bestie. We don't know.
I prefer to think that this lady fascist here,
it could be her lover. How about that?
That too.
Like Hitler could have an actual like lover, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah, but I don't see lady fascist sitting here and being like, I have friends. It's like, no, my ambition requires that I don't have friends. Like, if you want to consider,
I mean, Hitler had a lover.
Yeah, well, yeah,
That's
Eva
true.
Braun did for sure. But okay, you know what? That's fair, Daniel. That's fair.
My point.
I can't.
is
But Daniel, he had more than one emotion. He had angry and horny. So just throwing it out there, when you can only have one, what do you choose?
Well, you also said that it's one at a time, right? Like, so it's not like all of their emotions have been turned off. It's that they've focused on one at a time, right? So I'm wondering, to what Courtney was saying, like a furthering a kind of a connection with this alien spirit that's in this world, like through the child, like genetically linking them could also be a one step towards that, is what I mean.
Okay. This is a sticky wicket of a setting we've gotten ourselves in. That twist, while making things remarkably interesting and more alien, makes like the world and how we approach it a lot more difficult. So I'm like, this is why we have the twist. I think that it adds in a lot more spice, Anyway, so we've got Lady Hitler's lover and their alien baby. This sounds like the schlockiest thing in the world to me.
It's a Sci-Fi Channel original movie.
It sounds like the Sci-Fi Channel and Lifetime had a baby together, and this is what we've come up with.
Had a horrific alien.
No, this is Prestige HBO. You said
right.
Could go either
but
way.
I think that when you break it down to certain aspects, then you see it's like this is a love child between Sci-Fi and Lifetime, But I agree, Daniel. Prestige. We gotta keep it to Cinemax. It's an HBO. Wait, does Cinemax exist anymore?
I don't know if it does. Haven't heard
Okay,
it's
an
time.
HBO. It's what are the other ones?
Showtime.
See, this is the problem when you have a bunch of corporate monopolies, when there's only like 4 companies and they don't, like, for me, right? Like, I was back in the day, it's like, oh, IFC, Turner Classic Movies. Like, there are all these premium channels that used to exist. Now there's like 2. And I only know the one because that's what my brain is saying right now. So for the love of God, take me out of this, please. Let's move on. Who has a faction? Oh, Courtney does. So I'm going to go next. My faction.
It's evil.
You're going to have your turn. Look, come on. That's only fair. So my faction is, I thought that like the story that we're telling in the main settlement is like really locked in. It's really fascinating. I love everything about it. And so to me, I'm like, okay, this is The Walking Dead. This is the main series, right? So I've got to come up with the spin-off show. Like, this show became massively popular. I'm the one who's now responsible for making the other series that's like tangentially related, because it's like, oh, we got to milk this franchise for all it's worth, right? My concept is there's the main settlement, but there's got to be a group of researchers who are looking at the geological aspects, the meteorological aspects, the flora, the fauna. There are people out there who are a combination of explorers, scientists, engineers. They're looking for where they can put the next settlement, right? Because they know that they're going to evolve and expand to the point where they need one. So I've imagined that there's this group 2 out there that are just out there in the world. And here's the twist, right? There's this ranger type. There's a twist that I wanted to get into. They are all within drone robots because their bodies are still trapped within the Ethernet, the mind link that they had. So they're piloting these drone robots, and as a result, they're still able to feel the full gamut of their emotions. So you can have full drama out in the field with this like robot team go. That's the other thing that I wanted to get at. That's my concept for the other faction.
That is super. I love the post-human angle we've been taking with a lot of these factions. Like even the animals, which Courtney we're going to get to so shortly. Like I'm assuming has a post-human element to it because, you know, we don't want to forget that this is a society that's far removed from Earth society. And so the idea that like now there's a separation, there's the physical, the mental, and the emotional, and we've separated the 3 in the story physically, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I know that the original conceit was don't make it cyberpunk. And I feel like we already aren't cyberpunk enough. So I can throw in like the kind of like robot drone stuff, the sleeves, if you will, to make it so they're out there doing stuff and not have it feel cyberpunky, you know?
Yeah, I don't think it's cyberpunk either. I think has a synthesis, right? Cyberpunk typically, and this seems to be a clean separation. Like I'm picturing more sleek technology.
Yeah, less chrome sunglasses and more like Apple iPad or Apple iRobots where they're where they're in drones like doing exploration stuff, you know.
I do like the idea of them being like repurposed robots that would have played music or movies in the past or would have like cleaned up messes, but now they've been retrofitted with like stuff that allows them to get out into the wilderness and act as scouts.
From a storytelling perspective as well, what I think this adds is there is an element of danger to this, that you can have these robots get fucking demolished and it's totally fine. And mind you, it can still be like really tense for a multitude of reasons, but you can also have it so like, oh shit, that robot lost its arm, or oh shit, that entire team just got wiped out. And it's fine because the main operators are still back in their pods safe and sound, you know, but I think that there's some narrative stuff that might be kind of interesting to play with is what I'm saying with this conceit.
Yeah, I mean, even if their quote unquote body of the robot is maimed or destroyed in some way and their mind is totally fine, I imagine that they would still experience some level of trauma living through a death or a severe like maiming or something of that sort.
Yeah.
Thinking back actually to Cyberpunk 2077, that was, I thought, one of the more interesting things in the game, this idea of like basically VR tapes being recorded of people in like very harrowing or near death experiences or actual death, and people seeking.
You're thinking about that Jesus mission, aren't you?
Wait, what's the Jesus mission?
Where the person, the death row inmate, signs up to be recorded, like so other religious followers can feel what it's like to be crucified. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh man,
I don't think I did that one.
Daniel knows what I'm talking about. He watched that Tim Rogers video.
I've watched almost all of them, but I remember the Jesus planting, like when the system was bugging out and everybody stands like cross arm. Keanu does that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. There is a mission in that where you go and you talk to a death row inmate, and this person has signed up so their body, every fiber of their being is being recorded, and so they offer to be crucified on a cross so other people can then, religious people can then feel what it's like to have been crucified. And I think that
I do not remember that.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think we've ever talked about Tim Rogers or Action Button reviews, but I cannot tell you, and I know this is getting away from the podcast, this is worth it, this is important, Daniel can back me up on this. Go and watch Tim Rogers' reviews. You're going to look at those times and be like, why is that review of Doom 4 hours long? And then 20 minutes in, you'll be like, wait a minute, I'm 20 minutes into this video. What happened to the last 20 minutes? And then 5 hours later, you're going to be on your second Tim Rogers video. And then you can come back and be like, yo, Rob, thanks for that. Tim Rogers is amazing. I know. I've infected Daniel and Courtney with him before. So yeah.
I cannot express to you how much I love that man, and also that he is a certifiable genius. I know there is zero chance he will ever be on our podcast, but if that ever happens, I don't know what I would do with myself. It's like, you're chasing cars and you don't know what would happen if you get one.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be me.
Yeah. Anyway, Courtney, I'm suggesting that concept is kind of what we're talking about here,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I also think what might be interesting about that concept as well is two things. One, you become far more interested and the stakes become a lot different. It's not about like your bodily, like harm because of the robot thing. It also becomes like the mission is way more important, right? And I think that you can play around with that concept a lot more as well. It's like, oh, we need these things to save somebody's life. We need this animal, or we're trying to protect this animal to study it. There's so many different things that you can do with a different mission structure where you're not concerned about your bodily death, right? Alternatively, on the opposite end of like, this is not misery, but humor, imagine how funny it would be to replay like getting tossed around by the Earth equivalent of like a gorilla and be like, oh my God, look, you can see his arm got like 30 meters up in the air or something like that. Because there is a gallows humor, I would imagine, that would come from this kind of thing, whereas you don't have to necessarily.
That would be funny.
Right? Exactly. Where it's like, if you could experience like, yo, I'm going to go fuck that gorilla up, or like imagine the practical jokes, because your body doesn't matter. So it's like you're out there doing like dumb shit. Like people already do dumb shit with their bodies, and we're mortal and have flesh, and like we're fragile things. Imagine what it'd be like. You're like, oh, I have no consequences? Word. I'm going to go fist fight that gorilla or whatever. Like there's a bunch of ridiculous things we can do with that.
It's like Jackass on steroids. Exactly.
Yeah. Or it's like, oh, we got to retire this robot body because it's about to die. It's like time to fire it out of a cannon. Let's go, Oh, man. Anyway, so that's my factions. We've got weird robot Jackass, I get. So, Courtney, finally, we come to you.
At long last, yes.
At last, yeah. Courtney, hit us with your psychic animal detectives.
Yes, so drawing a bit on the Jurassic Park references we had going last time, and also, of course, the puppies. I wanted to have a group that's really focused on breeding and cloning animals to use on the planet.
Oh.
In particular, picturing dogs that are being crossed with some sort of native animal to help them survive better. And similar to yours, Rob, in a way, that this faction would be using those dogs as part of like scouting and hunting. And like we established before, animals are immune to the psychic effects of the alien objects. So maybe, not only are the dogs not affected by it, but they can also like sense the danger around those formations and have the ability to try to keep their humans away from that danger. And for the group themselves, I'm picturing like very outdoorsy garb, camouflage, a mix of clothes and materials that they had brought from Earth, paired with like animal skins and woven plant matter from the planet itself. Was actually also thinking that it'd be cool if there was some sort of plant on this planet that you can almost like mold or prune into shapes that you can use for armor and other things, like a really rapid bonsai type process.
Oh, that's cool. Like you basically like press a button that plants a bunch of seeds and they grow rapidly as armor or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. Or you can like kind of make it grow in a certain way so that it becomes a chest plate or whatever.
Yeah, that's dope.
Kind of solarpunky idea, which is neat.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. We're definitely moving into the solarpunk area.
Yeah, like I wanted to bring in more of the wilderness aspect because I think that's a cool part of like being on a new planet is the exploration and
yes,
and sort of avoiding the cyberpunk feeling too much by having all this nature around that they can interact with.
Yeah,
and having their cute puppies saving the day.
Absolutely. That's a great point, is to add the emphasis on the exploration, which is something that we really didn't do last episode. Like we're on a lush alien planet and we barely talked about the planet or the aliens, right? So I think that's a really great, although don't get me wrong, I think the idea of creating that strong anchor of having that main kind of ship or the mothership, the mother base, whatever you want to call it, I think that's a really great foundation to start a story and then build out from there. But I also think that we should have focused well, now we have the opportunity to focus more on the weird alien jungles around us. For some reason, right? I'm just picturing jungles for some, or like,
me too.
Yeah.
Like Endor kind of stuff.
Is that Endor is the one with the Ewoks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Daniel. Didn't know you'd be so offended.
Ewoks are now canon.
I do agree. I think it's tropical in some way. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, when you think of like a lush, like untouched planet, we tend to think of like Jurassic World, right?
I really like the idea that they're trying to crossbreed them with local fauna, because that will lead you to have stranger animals, instead of your typical ones. And I wonder what the practical applications of that kind of engineering would be, on the bad guy's side, even though they're trying to exterminate the animals. And the fact that there is alien fauna, which isn't something we acknowledge, but clearly there is.
Right.
So our animals appear to be immune to the psychic resonance. Is the regular fauna immune to it? Maybe through interbreeding, there's a way to, control and understand it for humans. And that's part of the mission of breeding them as well. I don't know. Or maybe that's what the bad guy is trying to do.
See, I have the opposite kind of feeling when it comes to like the lady fascist. I'm imagining there is a part in our prestige television show where there is like a raid on the facility that kind of breeds these animals, and they're taking like hammers and pipes to these cages, or not cages, but like tubes that have like embryos in them and stuff like that. Like if you want to talk about kicking the puppy moment, like they're literally wiping out an entire like kennel of puppies by doing that,
I have a feeling too, like in addition to like, certainly that's what they're doing. But I bet too, any good villain understands the value of a technology, even if they oppose it. And I wonder if in secret, she's also using that technology to get ahead of them.
Absolutely.
In some other way. She probably goes there, breaks everything, and takes a few vials with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what do people hate more than sadists? Hypocrites. And
Yes.
You think I'm joking? That is 100% true. People hate that shit way more. But yeah, no, that is 100%.
Unless you're a politician, in which case it's expected.
What? I mean, yeah, sure.
Pretty much.
But anyway, Daniel, yes, excellent point. Her having vials of that stuff and like trying to make her own army of, gargantuan dog monster alien
crabs.
Whatever.
Crabs.
Yeah, sure.
Giant enemy crabs.
You know what? Let's have them be crab dogs.
Furry crabs.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, God.
Anyway, at least they're not aphids this time, right? Like I'm at least winning in that regard.
God.
We get furry crustaceans.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Honestly, that's totally fine. Because I mean, furry crabs can be cute. I've seen them. Anyway,
this is also making me think of a book that I really like called Sirius by Olaf Stapledon. It was written in the 40s, and it's about a dog who's been sort of bred and engineered to have human levels of intelligence. And it's this just really interesting, like, existential story, because the dog, he doesn't fit in with humans because he's obviously still a dog. He can't like talk particularly well. He's still limited by his physicality, but he also doesn't work well with other dogs because he's so much more intelligent than they are. And wondering if like something like that could happen here, where over time, or maybe even the lady fascist is trying to like make these creatures more intelligent and more powerful as far as like being soldiers.
I think Lady Hitler is absolutely making chimeras.
Sure. Why not? I mean, why not? Like, toss it in there. Fuck it. I want to throw out two more literary references because I can. That remind me of this. One, A Boy and His Dog by Harlan Ellison kind of reminds me a little bit of that. And then also Flowers for Algernon, where maybe these boosts of intelligence that these animals have are temporary and they can feel themselves becoming less and less intelligent. If you wanted to crank up the tragedy just a little bit more, just toss them in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Flowers for Algernon. So Daniel Keyes, when he was alive, I met him when I was like in elementary school.
What?
Oh, really?
So I have a very deep connection to him because I remember him and he gave us like our awards when we were elementary school students.
Oh my God, that's adorable.
That's awesome.
This is new Daniel lore, by the way. This is new for
learning
me.
something new here.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay. We've got our factions. We've got our reconciliation with the twist. This world is as fleshed out as it ever has been. I mean, doubly so with the weird chimera things now. What's the adventure that we're going on here? Can I say as well that I would like to add the caveat that we can't really, because again, I like the idea that this kind of like lady fascist and her group and that whole story is playing out.
Mm.
Can we have the quest that we're doing here today be separate from that? Or do we want to directly involve this situation? I'm leaving it up to you. I would prefer that we leave that to like play out on HBO or whatever, and we have a separate quest. But if you guys want to explore that a little bit more, I'm cool with that as well.
Yeah, that was what I was initially thinking, was that it could be a group of like your scout robot people and my scouts with animals kind of trekking into the wilderness to track her down before she does something particularly horrendous, kind of like a Heart of Darkness journey into the jungle. But we could probably go in a different direction.
I mean, as long as it's in some way tied to the overall story, I think what would be like, even if they're doing something that's subordinate to the big story, I would like it to some way be connected. So like what you suggested, I think could work, because maybe, you know, they're doing something that's counter to what she's up to.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what if the ship is not part of their society anymore? Like, what if they don't actually regularly go to it? Like, it's been abandoned.
Well, why would they do that if they have this massive ship that has housed so many people? I would imagine that that's basically where you start, right?
Mm.
Well, I'm wondering if we position it that way. So, like, we have to take your ranger types and maybe move their pods to their current society. But if their ship is out of the picture, the journey could be from their current settlement back to that ship that maybe is like deep in the wilderness. I don't know why it's been abandoned. Perhaps there's a reason why they had to abandon it. And that would allow you to have a collision between what Lady Hitler's up to and what this party's up to, because she's also headed there, or her minions might be.
Maybe it has to do with the like innate radioactivity of the ship or something, where they had to abandon that area.
Yeah, maybe something failed. They had to abandon it.
Yeah. I do like that idea of like them venturing back into the ship that's now been like overgrown by all the natural plant life. Yeah, I feel like it lends itself to a nice visual.
I feel like that's where the robot rangers really come into play, is that they're the only ones who can walk into that area.
Yep.
And like be in there safely. So that's
because if it's radioactive, their physical bodies aren't affected by that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
True.
So sure, we can toss that in as well. So maybe things have been extra hard because their ship failed, and because like they assumed that they were going to have this kind of arc ship as like a base, and then something fails and it becomes like a poisoned, you know, like zone that they're just like not able to touch, right? Great concept. Really cool way to start, right? So where do we, you know what? I think if we rolled some themes and something to focus on, it might help us out with our main quest. How do y'all think about that?
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
All right. So the theme that we're focusing on in this particular mission is going to be hope. Okay, appropriate. Yeah, can't go wrong with that. And the thing that we're focusing on in this mission of hope is a cataclysm. Ooh, boy. Okay. Now, the obvious thing is you're fighting to stop a cataclysm from happening. We've already established that this ship is radioactive. Is the cataclysm that we're trying to prevent a complete and total nuclear meltdown from the ship?
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a great place to start, where, hey, this ship, it's about to go nuclear. And it's like, we didn't travel too far from the ship, so it's probably going to take us out. Maybe we don't want that to happen.
And damage their pristine environment.
Exactly. Also very important. Yeah.
I mean, it also makes sense why our villain is traveling back to the ship, because if she knows that those oracle spirits are there and her father's there, she needs to get to them before it melts down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and like pull them out?
Yeah.
Or at least consult with him, you know?
I was thinking that this neural net thing, like you, just because that's where the hardware or the servers are held, mean that you can still access that information. I like that concept for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe even the villain has a reason for this mission to succeed, because it's like, we don't want to lose those people who are on the servers.
Right.
What if she's using the weird animal crossbreeding technology to put those minds into instead of robots?
Oh, man.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Are you suggesting that we're going to have like a Professor Gorilla or a Professor Monkey or
yes,
or something even worse, a furry crab Professor Gorilla Monkey?
Yeah. Oh my God. This is quickly becoming a Saturday morning cartoon.
But it could be grotesque and horrific too.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but also you have like a talking monkey crab. Like, come on.
I mean, who's to say it's actually sentient in a way we understand? Like, it could be fucking weird.
We have ignored the kind of giant crystal monoliths that are hovering around and such. So yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah.
Oh, or we could scrap the Saturday morning cartoon animal crossbreed idea and go with like she's trying to get those minds into one of the crystals.
Oh.
Like somehow trying to mind melt them with the alien psychic energy.
Like the only way to interface with it, you have to get rid of your body to really get in there.
Interesting. There's a number of ways that we can go here, and I like that. My point is, regardless, right, that the villain faction is in on this plan and they're actually like supporting, waiting for the double cross to happen, right? Or alternatively, if you prefer, we can have it be a race against the clock to be like, okay, oh man, there's so many opportunities here that I'm spoiled for choice.
It could be both, because I can see the story taking a turn that like first it's a race, then they get overtaken, Lady Hitler captures them, and now they're kind of forced to cooperate when they learn that she has a particular vision. She's not just the monster they've made her out. She is a monster, but she's not just the monster they've made her out to be. And she shares some of her ideology with them, that she, and she reveals the secret to them. They don't believe it. And she's like, I can show you the truth, and that's why she wants to. So they're working together at that point. I'm sure she holds some things back because she's evil.
Yeah, I'm kind of preferring the idea that this person is like, I'm going to come with you, and then they don't trust her, and then there's the moment of curse your inevitable betrayal,
Exactly.
That's kind of what I'm more interested in. And then because what I think is also really interesting here as well, right, is Lady Fascist genuinely does not want this nuclear bomb to go off. But she also has ulterior motives here, right? It's like maybe she's also trying to pocket her ghost dad who's still around, or maybe it's like she gets exposed and then it's like, I don't care, if I can't have this, then I will personally launch this nuclear bomb. I think there's a lot of, for me, right, I often think about how I want this scenario to play out. And if I'm giving like, here, Courtney, you're going to be playing Lady Hitler, then guess what? You're going to have like a motive and a secret motive. And then it's like, you go from there. And I'm just picturing all the ways that this can go really fucking wrong for you,
Yeah. I could see like you were saying, her eventually wanting to use it as like an ultimatum or mutually assured destruction of some sort, where she gets pushed over the edge and her mind's been so fucked up by the alien energy that all she feels is like rage and wants revenge. And when she's on the ship, maybe if she feels her grasp slipping, she could set it off completely and annihilate everything.
And then of course the big climax that I imagine is an animal comes in and like dampens a lot of that evil and alien psychic energy. She starts to feel like a real human again, and then has the emotional breakdown and stuff like that, right?
Or the animal has to sacrifice itself to stop her.
Well, I mean, like, she's gonna kill it, so yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. cartoonishly evil, but in like an interesting and deep way, you know?
Mm.
Okay, what's the climax then? What do you guys perceive as the climax?
I'm still very interested in the alien energies and expanding on that in some way. But I don't know if this is like the quest for it.
This is the moment in the Prestige show where you get rid of the long-running villain and have to replace them with another completely different villain. This is the end of the Lady Fascist arc and the brand new rise of alien gorilla crab professor arc.
Oh my god. I mean, to answer your question about conflicts, oftentimes some stories I see the conflict actually happening at the very end, right before the conclusion. And I have a feeling the climax occurs in the ship as the action is rising to its pinnacle before the conclusion. Only because there's kind of a faux climax when they get captured, but that's really the midway point. So I have a feeling the real climax happens just before the end, which is kind of what you're hinting at, like swapping out the villain, which I think is a neat idea. To hint at the alien is the long enemy.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe this is a bit cliche. Maybe not. Lady Fascist is dead. Cut to her lover giving birth to the alien Damien baby. And then bam, that's the next season. It's generation 2. This child is growing up and dealing with being an alien fascist. Like, bam, we've got our options there.
You could even have there be a reversal, you know? So, like, not to say that person becomes a good guy, but that the child has a different ideology and the embodied alien carries the old ideology of Lady Hitler. So, like, basically, you could, because I'm noticing this happening too in Raised by Wolves a lot, where they keep reversing who's on top and who's on bottom. So, like, giving the colonists some dark side, I think, would be important in this too. I don't know how, but if at the very end of this story you can make the colonists not the good guys fully, you can then have the child of our villain potentially have a good idea that's not totally evil.
I think that's gonna do it, y'all. I think we got to end on the death of Lady Hitler. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's a good stopping point for me.
HBO, let us know if you are interested in the pilot. I mean, we can cast it, be no problem.
Yep. Can write that one Coke-filled afternoon if you like.
I mean, I'm more of a Pepsi guy. No, that's a lie. No one can genuinely say that. I can't even lie and make a joke about that. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com. Submit a prompt by following the link, and we'll build your world. I mean, we do it all the time. We have patrons who submit prompts. We have randos who submit prompts. If you don't want to be a rando, submit a prompt. We'll get to know you through the prompt. Anyway, if you want to follow us on social media, you can go to @Let'sWorldBuild on Twitter. If you want to come pitch us your own season of this TV series, tell us about it in the Discord. Go to our Discord with a link for that in the description. Or if you want to just toss money at us because you know this is going to make it on TV and you want to be in on the ground floor, go to Patreon. That's where you can find patron-only episodes, and you get this episode a week early. That'll do it for this episode of World Build with Us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.